Hi, my name is Matthew Carnegie, and as always, I say, keep the faith. Today, I'd like to talk to you about a concept that I've heard from certain circles. That concept is the idea of a higher power. Throughout history, many people have tried to nail down in concrete and static terms and images of what a higher power is. There's religious literature about it. Many cultures have many different types of religious literature. Many of them differ greatly, and some of them are very similar. I'm not really interested in talking about religious literature or religion. That's not my interest. I am interested in talking about the idea of a higher power. Recently, I've been coming to believe in a higher power myself. What is a higher power? A higher power is a power that's higher than ourselves. Seems a little obvious at first, but it can be very difficult to comprehend and even more difficult to integrate on account of our ego, probably, whatever it is. And certainly in my experience, I find it difficult to integrate, or at least I have found it difficult to integrate in the past. When I say a power greater than myself, allow me to elaborate. When I think of myself, one of the things that I believe to be a truism to myself is that I'm a limited being. I was born at a certain place and at a certain time. I've existed across those certain places and times. I've had certain experiences. Ultimately, my perception of the world has come exclusively from the space and time that I've been in and the experiences that I've had. What this means is that there's so much more going on besides what I've directly experienced, or even what I can imagine. I have a concept of history based on books or listening to people speak, images that I've seen, or movies that I've watched. I have a viewpoint on the different cultures, but I've only directly experienced my own, the one that I've been directly a part of. So there's this vastness of the world that I have had no uh, connection with. So that's where the higher power comes in. The idea, of course, is that there's a power that has experienced everything. A little hard to comprehend, but I'm sure when it comes to the higher power, it's easier for him than for us. I say him. That's a holdover. I hope it's not offensive. Him, her would probably be better. Maybe her, him, if I'm feeling a little snarky. But ultimately, the point is that the higher power has had experiences that go beyond our limited perception. The higher power has been able to be everywhere, see everything. What that means is that when I try to make decisions on my own, my data set is extremely limited. And that means that the decisions that I can make are only of a certain quality. Yet, when I turn my life and my will over to a higher power, that higher power, what I'm doing is I'm enlisting a power that doesn't have a limited data set, that isn't confined to a specific body, isn't confined to a certain place or confined to a certain time. That gives this higher power the ability to make a decision that would be best all time, across time. With my limited purview, I can make a decision that seems best in the moment, but I don't know how that moment is going to ultimately impact me and how it's going to change across time. And yet, when it comes to the higher power has already seen and done and been everywhere. So it knows what the consequences of a certain decision or choice will be, how it will impact, what will be the result of it. So what I'm recommending, because this is what I've started to do, is to turn your will and your life over to a higher power. I can understand that there's a lot of resistance to this, especially if there's religious trauma or trauma in general. I used to hold a lot of resentments at life and being, and the idea of turning my will and my life over to anything else seemed like a terrible idea, because oftentimes in the past I had made myself vulnerable in that way, and I'd been victimized quite brutally, tragically. And that's a terrible thing. And if that's happened with you, I'm sorry. Even though I had no part in it, hopefully. Who knows? I've been going to a Buddhist temple, and there's all this talk on karma, and sometimes we don't know the impact that we have, far-reaching impact. Regardless, I'm sorry, not because that I've contributed it, but because it's a terrible thing to go through. And I feel a similar pain. Well, not to be prescriptive. Anyway, this isn't the point. The point is, despite the fact that it seems sometimes in our best interest to never trust anyone or anything, I can give testimony that trusting in a higher power will be in your best interest, and that trusting in a higher power will ultimately benefit you. It's not always going to seem that way. Oftentimes, what happens when you start trusting in a higher power is you encounter many problems in your life. And oftentimes, people can see the encountering of problems as a problem. It's not. This is a misnomer. The encountering of problems is instead an opportunity for your higher power to demonstrate just how much higher of a power it has over the problems of life. I know when I turned my will and my life over to a higher power, it seemed almost immediately I began to go through intense challenges, and I dealt with horrible, painful feelings. And it seemed like I'd made a mistake. This is exactly why I don't do this. What was I thinking? I don't want any of this. I better keep doing what I was doing, which is hiding and scheming and figuring out how I'm going to avoid pain. I'm not sure what it was that got me to endure, but I did. And what I found was that these problems weren't permanent, weren't unsolvable, and couldn't truly harm me in the short or the long term. And I was shown by this higher power that despite the severity and grandiosity of the problems, they could be navigated and solved. And because I faced these challenges, because I gave my will over to get this done, I was given a whole new set of opportunities, a whole new set of experiences, and a whole new relationship with myself. I'm finding that I can take a lot more than I thought. I'm finding things that I thought were important weren't. And I'm finding things that I thought weren't important are. All this is because instead of relying on my own limited perception and my own will, I turn my will and life over to a higher power that knows better, that sees more, that has a better understanding. That's what I would recommend. If you're looking to grow and take on challenges and problems, to heal, to expand, to live, I would recommend getting a higher power in your life. I don't know what it'll look like for you. I don't know what I would say if I were asked to describe what a higher power is to me, other than a power higher than myself. I believe ultimately it's a sense that I feel. And in that sense, my intuition is sparked. And I'm able to make decisions that I wouldn't normally. And I'm able to take actions that I wouldn't normally. That's been my experience. So don't worry too much on what a higher power is or what it looks like or how to define it. Just know that it's a power higher than yourself. And then turn your will and your life over to it. I found a lot of this is waiting. Not necessarily a waiting as in like, go ahead and do something, but waiting as in all of a sudden I'm not actively trying to scheme and plan and make things work on my own and figure out how I'm going to accomplish life or pull something out of life or convince people or institutions and so on and so forth. Instead, I wait and I allow what's important to come to me. And from then on, I act. And I'm finding much of the action I was taking in the past were in the wrong direction, or a matter of spinning my wheels, or were taking me to a path that was ultimately fruitless. And yet in my waiting on my higher power, taking a moment, all of a sudden the right path opens up. And I can go down that, and that path brings me to what is truly valuable and what I truly want, not just what I will settle for. So that's my recommendation. I think I said that. Turn your will and your life over to a higher power. Get a higher power and start to know that this higher power can do things for you which you thought would be impossible or could never imagine. That's been my experience. And I hope that it is your experience as well. And I believe that it can be. Not in a, lottery sense, not in a this may happen or it may not happen, in the sense that I believe if you have the courage to do so, then your life will open up. I think that's the sign. As always, my name is Matthew Carnegie, and I say, keep the faith.